Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakeville Planning Board to order. It is
Recording in progress.
February 24th at 7 p.m. of 2022. We are meeting, it's a hybrid meeting, so we are in person at the Lakeville Police Station. Here in the building, present, we have Barbara Mankowski, Peter Conroy, and myself present from the Lakeville Planning Board. In addition, remotely, we have Jack Lynch. Jack, could you just give us a hello?
Hello, right here.
Present with, he's remote, as well as our clerk, Kathy Murray, is present. And the town planner, Mark Resnick, is present. The first item on our agenda, and actually, before I go into that, I just wanted to state for the record, I had a discussion with the chairman from the select board today because there was a little bit of concern and confusion about going back to in-person meetings. So as I already stated, this is a hybrid meeting where we have some folks participating remotely and the rest of us here in person. We don't have a lot on our agenda tonight, and there are no real public hearings that will happen. So we wanted to use this opportunity where we were such a small board that we could easily meet COVID compliance, as well as give LakeCAM, our partners in filming all the town board meetings, an opportunity to work out any kinks with just what we're doing, a hybrid meeting. After some discussion with the chairperson from the select board, she agreed that this probably was a good thing to get done. It is a bit ahead of the town's recommended approval, but because we had such a small board, it seemed like it worked well. So at this point, I'd like to open our first hearing, which is a site plan review for 310 Kenneth Welch Drive. This is for a new site plan, and at the applicant's request, I make a motion to continue that hearing until our March 24th public meeting at 7 p.m.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And myself. Motion carries with a majority. And again, for the record, Michelle McEachran is not present, a planning board member. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we're going to go through a couple of bylaw review items that we've been working on to get on the spring town meeting agenda to update some of those bylaws with a public hearing to be set later on. First item is the sign bylaw update. So in our packet, we have an amended sign bylaw. We've gone through it at a couple of hearings. I'm not sure if there were any changes since the last hearing, but at this point, I'd like to pass it around to some other board members. Barbara, did you have any comments on the latest revision to the sign bylaw?
Not at this time,
And were you pretty happy with where we're at?
Pretty happy with where we're at.
Peter?
Yeah, I am as well. I think it covers a lot of material, so it's pretty. It does everything that we've asked it to do. So.
And Jack, are you pretty satisfied at this point?
Yes, yes, I think it's all inclusive. I think it is well done.
Okay. I know Michelle had a few notes, and I believe she forwarded them to you, Mark.
Yes.
So, and I know it was probably today before this meeting, so I don't know if you had a chance to go through them. Did you?
Yes, I did. I looked at her comments. Two of them had to do with definitions. The first definition is something she took from something KP Law related to electronic message boards. The definitions of those. It's similar, it's a little different. I don't really like theirs. It could be interpreted different ways, but yeah, I can make that work somehow. And And the other part she points out is that shopping center or business center signs, we already have a reference in there for common directory signs.
Yep.
So I'll replace that in there.
Okay. And I'll pass around these changes to Peter and Barbara just to take a quick glance at. So hopefully, if everybody's in agreement with those changes, we'll have that prepared for the next meeting so we can vote to hopefully hold a public hearing. Mark, what I'll do too is I'll get you the document from, it's Copeland and Page, now KP Law. That's Town's Council. So I guess there was a memo, I think it's dated September 2008. That somebody must have tried to do something at that point. It is, obviously, that's a little bit dated, so I don't know if, with that first definition, you could just use your definition and then put or, a sign that displays lighted message that changes, so you have the legal description from council in addition to what you had to cover both.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Belt and suspenders.
On the second page, she had common directory sign kind of highlighted in red. I don't know if that's a significant change or if it's just a minor change in language.
She was just pointing out that it's already in the defined or mentioned business signs as common directory signs, which is the change I made or will make on the first page of the definitions. Just of the title of that definition.
Okay.
So it's consistent.
All right. Now, how about on page 3? There was a section she calls out to possibly remove.
Right. So we had discussed before that there's a lot of copy signs, electronic message boards in the business districts already, and that the average size is, or the standard size, almost all of them appear to be 12 square feet. So we had talked about allowing them by right as 12 square feet. I know Michelle would like to make them all prohibited, and then the ones we do have would become pre-existing non-conforming. So she's highlighted those sections which limit the total size and the hours of operation to 12 square feet.
Okay. So I would let that be up to discussion for the board. So if you move right along and we'll go through the rest, because I'm not going to look to put everybody on the spot on that as much as maybe we can discuss in a few minutes and then hopefully come up with a solution.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking is that maybe, and today it's a special permit, so maybe we keep it as a special permit, but we have the limitation as 12 square feet. In other words, you still have to go through the special permit process. I was trying to think it was a little simpler not to make people do that because we have quite a few of them.
Yep.
But
and can I just ask, if somebody applies for a special permit, you can't just deny it because you don't like them or you don't like, you need grounds to deny it based on something. You can't be arbitrary and capricious. So if we were to offer them by special permit, I assume we would have some regulations or standards that we would define beyond 12 square feet. Because if it was only 12 square feet, basically it would be by right. You just have to get the paper filled out, right?
yes, I mean, it has to be not detrimental to the neighborhood or anything like that. So perhaps there's a section of roadway where a business might be located, where it's surrounded by residential properties, and that might be
So many 100 feet from a residential property would allow you the right to not permit it.
well, you know, they may find that having, let's say, an electronic message board in the middle of a residential neighborhood, just because there's a business there, they may not find it, desirable for that to receive a special permit, so they have the right to deny it if we made it by special permit. On the flip side, if you are on Bedford Street where there's already 6 others, it's probably, just something they need to make the to the zoning board to review to make sure it complies. The 12, no bigger than the 12 square feet.
Right, I just think we need some language in there if we're gonna do by special permit to make sure that there are some standards that give you a reason to deny it other than subjectivity.
Well, special permits are designed to be somewhat subjective to the, what's best for the neighborhood.
Right, so I guess the standard is if one's already there.
What?
So I guess the standard then in that case is if there's one already there, you don't have the right to deny it.
Not necessarily. I mean, that's subjective and it's up to the zoning board.
Okay. Page 4, you had a little highlighted section in the 10 feet from property line. That's already a standard though, or no?
Yeah, apparently, she's referring to, that's already a standard, 6.3 point, hold on, let me just make sure. Yes, it's already a standard right on page 2 under general regulations, the first item. So it's already a standard in the bylaw.
Okay, so that's been captured.
Yep.
On page 5, do we need to add the reference to section 6.6.8.1?
I don't think we need to add the reference, but she's just cross-referencing them because they're similar sections. Maybe I'll remove one so that there's not a repetition.
Just make sure if there's any loss of language that it gets put into the one you keep.
Yep.
And then on page 6, she had a couple of things lined out on 6.6.7 and 10 and 11 and 13.
Yeah, those are the things that if you wanted to prohibit internally illuminated or electronic message boards or changeable copies signs, then there would be no need to have these 3 lines in here, which is the maximum, the limitation on the size.
Okay. So we have Michelle's notes, so I guess I would ask all the planning board members. I'll start with you, Peter. Do you have a preference on the electronic message board item as far as should it be by special permit only, or should it be prohibited or allowed with some standard?
I don't think it should be prohibited. I think that as time goes by, more businesses will want them. They're extremely helpful. Yeah, we're not anti-business, so
Done tastefully, they're not bad.
exactly. I think we figured out the colors. At first we were a little overly restrictive with the colors, and now we wound that back. I'm content with the 12 square feet. I think that's a good size sign. This isn't a major, none of the streets in this town need anything larger than that.
Yep.
I think as time goes by, we have to figure out the light intensity, but that's a little bit beyond most of our scope as far as how you word that. I drive by signs and I was like, wow, that sign is ridiculous. On a dark night, it's way too bright. And everybody must say that. It's counterproductive to the business, I think, actually. So, but I don't know where
The sign becomes white noise because of the brightness that you're just not even
Right.
paying attention to what it says.
Exactly. So if everybody drives by there and be like, that's too bright, if you see it lighting up the inside of your car, then, it's not effective. But,
Barbara, do you have any, I'm sorry.
no, that's it. Yep.
Barbara, do you have any thoughts on the prohibition or by special permit on the electronic message board?
The prohibition concerns me that, no, let me back up. The special permit concerns me because of the subjectivity, and I think we will run into the case where you're just gonna have to say yes in cases where it already exists. And my main concern is not having us turn into having like a, speak louder, I'm sorry, route, like in Randolph, there's sections that I drive by there, Route 44 I think about a lot of times. I personally am not in favor of the signs, of the electronic signs myself. It's not that I'm not pro-business. I would rather have signs be have a little bit more rural character to them. Maybe not be neon flashing, maybe, something like the police sign we have here looks really nice where it's like a basic sign with lights coming over the top.
And obviously, they're not trying to advertise a product. A lot of it's informational stuff that goes on these. So it, by its nature, it has a more pleasing appearance.
Correct.
But
I just
All right,
don't know that I
so-
want our roadways to be a place for advertising for businesses. I think letting them know that the business is here is what it's there for, and advertising their products, I think there's other ways to do that.
so prohibited or not?
Prohibited.
And what about you, Jack? What do you think?
I'm not in favor of prohibiting them. I think that mindful of Mr. Reddick's remarks about subjectivity, I would be more in favor of, special permits.
Okay, so generally, what I get out of the board's opinion is two folks would like to see them prohibited. I guess I'm in favor of allowing them with some restrictions and standards, whether it be through special permit or not. Peter and Jack, I get a sense you're kind of on the same page as that.
Yeah.
So that said, Mark, can you
Yep.
try to craft something, or maybe two separate sections that we can vote on next meeting to resolve whether we maybe give an option for the folks in favor of prohibition, whether it be just removal and we look at it that way, and then maybe try to tighten the restrictions on allowed, but some standards or either special permit to just clarify what way we go so we can vote on. That seems like the sticking point in all of this. So I guess we'd maybe like two options if you could provide that for the next hearing. Do you think that's possible, Mark?
Sure. Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
We can do that.
All right. Is everybody all right with moving on from this subject?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to just make a quick motion to continue the sign bylaw discussion until the planning board's March 10th public meeting at 7 p.m. Next item on the agenda is site plan review, including design standards.
You need a second for that motion, Mark, at all?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we're gonna
Second.
have a motion, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Myself. Motion carries. Signed by law is continued. What did I just give you?
Sorry, the very tail end of the sign stuff.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is design standards. Mark, I didn't have anything this week in the emails, and I just want to make sure we're there on the entire site plan review as well as these design standards. Did anybody else have feedback on the first stuff with the site plan review, where we had a denial mechanism?
No.
Okay, so did everybody get a chance to review the architectural standards?
Yes.
Yes.
Although I didn't write the architectural standards and stick it into the bylaw, I figured I'd send it out separately. It would be, this was a question that came up earlier, it would be within the site plan review bylaw, would be a section in there. And it would be for the business district and for multifamily dwellings.
Okay. Well, I am in favor of the changes, and I believe that the entire draft that you already did for the first part of site plan review. I guess I'm wondering, could you plug this in where it would go in the site plan review? And again, I'm fine with what you've provided to lay out a roadmap for somebody to come in and develop in town. Where it's in there and we have a mechanism for denial if it doesn't meet the standards, I think that that's pretty suitable and a good thing. I would just defer to, I know Barbara has had a lot of concerns about these standards, so if you have any input or changes, Barbara.
No, I think that is definitely more like, what I think we're looking for. I'll have to compare that with actually what Zinc was really pleased with the way that we had laid out the awnings, and I just have to compare that language with what we have in our existing bylaw.
Okay.
But I think that it's only an improvement.
Jack, did you get a chance to go through those?
Yes, sir, I did. I thought I was fine. I was pleased with what he had done.
Okay. And Mark, did you have any input while we're kind of looking over in case there's any comment here?
No, I mean, I think those give you the authority to require changes to a building to address the concerns that you had over two recently constructed buildings, which would be the dollar store and the Walgreens, that were made out of cinder block, a concrete block, and that don't really fit in with the rural New England character of the community. And those architectural standards are sufficient to give you the authority to require changes to those buildings should they be, submitted today or some other day, in the future.
Right. So I'm satisfied as far as what you've got there to plug it into the draft bylaw change that you did for site plan review. To have that on the agenda for the next meeting, unless anybody else has any changes, I would say that we're pretty much ready for a public hearing on that one. Would anyone else agree with that?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
So, like I say, Mark, if you could just plug that in where you think it should fit within the text of site plan review to have that as our packet for next meeting. And I'll make a motion to continue the site plan review entirely, including the design standards, for the March 10th at 7 p.m. public meeting to vote to have a public hearing on that. So that's a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Motion carries. So, Mark, on the agenda this week, we had a filling station correction from 2018. We didn't have anything in our meeting. I think something was circulated several weeks back. Did you want to just touch base on that real quick?
Yeah, there's still that same correction that was sent out to you, and I think that's probably the only one. I will.
We weren't going to try and change it. We just needed to post for a public hearing, right?
Well, so the first step would be to, at the end of next meeting, as we work through these items, is to vote to send it to the selectmen so it can be placed on the warrant.
Right.
Once you do that, we will then figure out a date and time for us to hold the public hearings on the various articles that you submit.
Right. All right. So, again, we're not trying to amend that. We're just trying to clean up. That's a housekeeping issue.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'll motion to continue the filling station correction from 2018 town meeting until our March 10th meeting at 7 p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack? And myself, vote aye. Motion carries with a majority. Did you see anything, Aaron?
Jack froze up.
Okay.
Oh, he's back. Jack's back.
Very good.
For the record, Jack, did you hear that vote? I called you?
No. No.
We were voting to continue the filling station corrections. We had a motion and a motion and a second. So were you in favor of continuing that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's call it unanimous for who's present. The open space residential development bylaw. I wanted some more discussion on this one, Mark. I had some other notes. I did want to kind of dig my feet in on the frontage thing. Just because if we're cutting the space in half, basically, I think that the frontage should be a little closer to half of what we have now, which would be somewhere between 75 and 100 feet. And I think we'd have the right to create some rules and regulations to this, and we could offer a waiver, but I wouldn't want to see it on more than like 20% of the lots. And it would be strictly for, say, I think we had discussed before, like a corner lot that might require less frontage but still had the square footage. But I wouldn't want to see the whole development be 50-foot frontage. I think that that's a bit low. I'm just going to look back.
Where we've done, I've used them, or we've done it in the past in other subdivisions. It's been generally for, two of 10 lots, let's say, 25% in order to get to some, let's say there's a higher piece in the back so they can get a long driveway into a development site behind the houses that might be out front. So those are the kinds of situations where it's been permitted before. So I could write something up where I give the board a little more leeway, make it a little stricter, but give you the leeway to allow them as well. So I think having that flexibility allows the board to work with the developer to get as good a site design as possible.
Yeah, and I think, would you agree that having rules and regulations for this bylaw would make sense as far as if we needed to grant a waiver, we could, but we wouldn't have to, and it would give us the right for denial because we'd have some standards? Because we can't just deny it because we don't like it. We have to have a reason.
Well, yes, but I think, I think, again, it's a special permit, so, if you don't feel it's a benefit to the community and the neighborhood, I mean, you can deny it just solely based on that. But I think I can add in a couple things where I'll increase the minimum. Let's say the board can reduce frontage to 50 feet on 20% of the lots if they deem that it provides for a better overall site design and then if the waiver is not granted or some language like that.
What about, we would have the option to maybe say that not all, but some of the units could either be affordable or age restricted, or maybe, call out the number of bedrooms, and or ADA accessible units.
Well, I think, excuse me, that's the dog.
And I think those would be things that maybe go in the rules and regulations of that section to give us, I think having that in there is your subjectivity, so that if we really didn't like one, we could say, well, you didn't provide enough age restricted, you didn't provide ADA accessible, and, we really wanted to see a certain percentage of affordable on those grounds.
I don't know if you can just require that there be an individual age-restricted unit here or there without requiring the entire development, and with there being, I wouldn't say a glut, but there being significant number of age-restricted units available. I don't know if I'd do that. I mean, as far as affordability, I mean, you want to try and encourage developers to use this bylaw, not discourage them or make it more difficult for a developer. Many developers who don't deal with affordable units and the requirements may choose to avoid doing this because of the requirement that 1 out of every 10 units or might be required to be affordable. So you kind of want to make this as relatively user-friendly as you can, while giving you the ability to require as to try and get the best layout. That's the goal of this type of bylaw, is to get the best design so that you can get a developer can still get the same number of units, but you get some open space, a recreation land, you limit, environmental impact, and so on and so forth.
I agree. I just think that, could you at least agree that maybe we could put some rules and regulations in this draft that I think the rules and regs would give us, I'd feel more comfortable with it.
I would too.
Anything from taking a surety until a certain portion was done to call that out on, because they would be putting a roadway in most likely. And I know there are standards under subdivision, but I think we'd want to still call them out within this bylaw, because it would probably veer or want some significant waivers from our standard subdivision rules. I think we'd want to call out the operations and maintenance of any drainage easements would not be on town property. So we wouldn't have to adopt anything within the open space, because I know they don't have to be on the lots, but that'd be something that would either want a homeowners association or developer to somehow deed restrict that for the actual development, not the town.
Well, I guess that part has, generally a lot of this is, if the street is an accepted roadway, then the drainage kind of goes with it. So, and you really try not to put the drainage on private, individually owned lots. I've had lots of problems with that in the past. So, what was the first part of what you said? So, we can try, I can try and see what we can do about, as far as the bonding, security on the road, that follows the standard subdivision control.
Yeah.
They're receiving a definitive subdivision approval and a special permit under the OSRD bylaw. So they still have to comply with all of our construction standards, the performance guarantee standards, and the site plan review, putting up a bond, not releasing any lots or releasing lots over time, and releasing funds, as construction.
Yep, and I agree with all that. It's just in recent years, the planning board's leaned a little bit more towards the homeowners association and not adopt the roadway if we didn't have to, because there's really not there's no value in that for the town. And if we can leave that on the developer to start a homeowners association so they handle their own plowing, there are several, even older, well-off developments that still handle their own plowing, like the Parkhurst development.
Yeah, your bylaw wouldn't prohibit that. What's written here wouldn't prohibit them from creating a homeowners association and having some, and having it own the drainage or basin or whatever is there for within the right of way to handle stormwater. So it doesn't necessarily prohibit it. You just, what you didn't want was for that homeowners association to own the open space.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That is what we said. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take some time with you. Maybe next week I'll come into your office and we'll talk about some of this and see if we can
Sure.
come up with some sort of rules and regs just to go with this and get my mind at ease where we pluck some of those pieces out to worry about them in the subdivision control stuff rather than in this.
Yeah, I think you have enough authority, but we can talk it over and see if we need to add anything. So.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that? And,
One question mark, right?
yep.
So the open space can be used for, there's a list in here of what it can be used for. One of them being forestry or agriculture. So, and then it said, as long as you reach, if somebody were to present a plan that had open space and that open space was a bog, for example, but they didn't have 20 units, they only had, say, 18, there would be no open space other than to look at, because a bog is basically inaccessible to people. When you hit that milestone of 20 lots, then they would have to make sure that there's areas that are actually set forth or set apart for actual outdoor like activity, like walking trails, a playground, whatnot.
Well, I don't think that the bog would count solely towards the open space because it would have to have been proven to be developable lots.
Oh, okay. Well,
So it could be part of it, but it
Right.
wouldn't be
so in order for it to qualify, you would have had to
enough land around
you have
it.
you have to take land that could be developed and not develop it.
Yep.
Gotcha.
May I ask a
Alright.
question, though? To your point, would we be able to not develop that land at all? So it doesn't have to be developed for a park or a playground or something like that. It can be left in perpetuity as it is naturally, right?
Yeah, from what I read, I merely just use that as an example, but
Okay.
like there are certain things, like say, when you say agriculture, it's not accessible. You know, there's no gallivanting across the bog,
Cornfield.
or
Farmer's going to run you out of there.
a cornfield, a little less, you could crisscross across it and it would probably still be fine. But like, some things just it would ruin them. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I was curious. Okay.
So, Mark, to just try to help answer Barbara's question, giving you like 2 or 3 hypotheticals, if an open space development comes in front of the planning board looking for a special permit, and it's 50 acres of treed land, it's all forested land,
Yep.
and the developer's plan with the open space layout is to clear 25 acres and build houses. The planning board has the right to let that remain trees. You don't have to have them clear anything, that we can force them to leave it forest.
That's correct.
And if they came to us and there was a field that was select cut maybe twice a year as part of the property, and the rest was wooded and or maybe semi-cleared, and the planning board agreed on a plan where the developer developed the stuff that was semi-cleared and the open space was the field, could that be then just forced to be left as a conservation restriction on an open field and not have anything done to it?
So the answer is yes, it could be, or it could be if if it was deeded to the commission and they felt, well, there's let's say a local farmer who used to always cut that for hay, right, twice a year
Yep.
for his horses and stuff, and they wanted to maintain that because it's
Which obviously would be the
community.
same use. That would be the intent of the whole bylaw.
Right. It would be owned by the commission, but they would still allow that horse owners or whatever to still hay those fields so that they could have the hay, and you'd maintain, it'd still be open space. People could walk through there and do other things, but it would serve like a dual use.
Right.
Or they could say, well, no one really wants to hay this anymore. The owner who did hay it sold it, and we're not in the business of, selling hay, and no one else wants to maintain the field, so we'll let it, grow up.
Right. So
I mean,
is there
those are like a couple of the choices.
is there a scenario you can think of where the open space, whether it be forested, a field, or otherwise, that in any way could change outside of what the planning board thought it was when they approved the open space subdivision?
I mean, the only thing would be, generally you deed it to the commission, Conservation Commission. So unless they decided to change the use, so let's say it was a field for a long time, and 10 years from now, no one wanted to plant corn on it or hay it.
Could the town come in and say, we want to make a ball field over there?
Well, not if it's deeded for conservation purposes.
Yep.
That would require going to the legislature and you can change that, but it would require something like that. It can be deeded to, for open space, for recreation. So let's say it's a larger subdivision of 20 or more lots, and you feel that you want active recreation facility there. Because now you have a sizable community, and let's say there's another neighborhood next door, and so there's not a park nearby, and you could have that deeded to the town and maintained as recreation as well.
Okay. Does that answer? I think that's a pretty good summary of what could happen. You good with that, Peter?
Yes. Yep.
All right, so I will plan on meeting with you sometime next week, Mark, just to talk about rules and regs.
Okay.
I think we're moving right along on this one, but I'll still make a motion to continue this till our next meeting, and you and I will convene in the meantime to come back with something at the next meeting. So motion to continue until March 10th at 7 p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Myself vote aye. Motion carries with a majority. Mark, I didn't see something in here, or actually I think I did, but I don't have it printed. The breweries and brew pub stuff.
Yeah, I worked on a couple definitions for a brewery and a tap room and a brew pub / restaurant type facility. But I need to sit down with Nate about those because currently right now brewing would be a manufacturing, which is allowed in the industrial district, and maybe even in the business district. So I'd have to look. That's why I want to kind of sit down with him on that. And then, and brew pubs are allowed, or restaurants are allowed both in the industrial and the the business district. So I'm a little curious, and maybe you guys know, why would restaurants be allowed in the industrial district? Because typically they're not.
I'm not sure if we have one already and they thought that was good zoning. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I do want to keep moving along on this one, Mark. So where we don't have anything, I'll let you continue to draft up something, but I just want to give the board members kind of a heads up on where this came from. I think that there was an inquiry about putting a possible tap room type brew pub in one of the local already established buildings in town in a business zone. So I think that's why you wanted to trigger getting ahead of this, Mark, and creating some definitions on it. Would you say that's an accurate summary of what happened?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's kind of why he's working on this, is at least to get out ahead of it. So if something comes in front of us, we're more prepared. So we'll continue that to the next meeting, Mark, and if you could continue to work on those definitions to create some sort of zoning for that, that'd be great. I'm going to try and zip through a few things here because I know one of us didn't feel well and we may lose an individual, so want to get this done before we don't have a quorum in-house, just in case the hybrid thing had an issue. We have a zoning board of appeals petition for Maxie Johnson, 2 Morrison Way, which is a residential thing, which I know typically we don't comment on. Do you guys have any concerns, or do you accept to make a recommendation of no comment to the ZBA? Okay, I make a motion that the planning board makes no recommendation or no comment to the zoning board of appeals for the Maxie Johnson petition at 2 Morrison Way.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Myself. Motion carries. We have minutes on the agenda from January 27th, which was a remote meeting. Looks like everybody was there, so everybody can vote on it. Did anybody have any comments about these?
I'm good with what's there.
Okay. And I know Michelle told me she was satisfied. I'm good with this. Peter, do you have any comments?
Nope.
Jack, you good with these minutes?
Fine by me.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve the January 27th planning board minutes, January 27th, 2022, planning board minutes for the remote meeting as drafted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And myself. Motion carries with a majority. And our next meeting will be March 10th, 2022 at 7 PM. You will have to look on the agenda on the town's website to get confirmation on whether that will be an in-person or a remote or a hybrid meeting. Hopefully we get good feedback from LakeCAM tonight on how this went. And we'll see. So you'll have to watch the agenda for that as to how the meeting will be attended, but nonetheless, it will be March 10th at 7 PM. Mark, do you have any brief comments or any announcements you'd want to make before we conclude?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, I know Michelle had some stuff, but obviously she couldn't be here. I'll try and have her catch up with you during the week, but she was involved in, excuse me, a recodification project for some of the old zoning where they were renumbering everything. So I think she wanted to try to pass some of that off and make an announcement. So maybe we could put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Kathy, if you got that, just to do the recodification announcement on the March 10th meeting. Okay. You guys
I'm good.
okay?
Yep.
Yep.
That being said, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Myself. Motion carries unanimously. Meeting is adjourned.